Welcome back to the exciting video. And what we're talking about today is the definitive, the list, the absolute top 5 guitar tones ever. So I got to ask right out of the gate, does your tone suck? There's nothing worse than having a sucky tone when you're a guitar player. The only thing that could possibly be worse than having a sucky tone is having a sucky girlfriend. And out of the two, I'd rather have a sucky girlfriend than a sucky tone. Because when you're a guitar player, tone is everything. Because if you're a mediocre guitar player, but your tone just kills, you can get by with a lot of stuff just by having a rockin' tone. And I've said this 1,000 times. I would rather see a mediocre band that puts on a hell of a show than a great band that puts on a shitty show. And as much as I love guitar proficiency, I love seeing people who just know how to just know how to absolutely shred. I love watching it. But it's really, really bad when they have a tone that is so painful to listen to. You would rather murder your cat than have to listen to that sound. And if this is a tone you have, then you should be ashamed of yourself. And you should actually seek psychiatric help. Because tone is critically important as a guitarist. We're out there in front. We are the forefront. You have your singer, you got your guitar player. Everything else is fodder. You've got to have tone. To have a great band, you got to have great songs. You got to have a great singer. You got to have a great guitar player. You need a great bass player and a great drummer. But boy, you better have good tone. Because great tone will absolutely make your playing that much better. And I did a video on, do you connect with your guitar? Because if you do not connect with your guitar, you're never going to want to play it. Well, the same thing with your tone. If you have your $3,000 guitar and you're playing through your Boss Katana amp, you're backing up. You're not doing it right. And you know, we used to have this saying years and years ago, had a motorcycle dealership. And it always baffled me when people would come in and buy $12,000 motorcycles, $15,000 motorcycles, and then buy a $300 helmet. Always baffled me. The most important thing on that motorcycle is your head. I would think you might want to protect that. But they would spend $250, $300 on a motorcycle helmet and $15,000 on a new Ducati or whatever have you. So same thing kind of works with tone. Why go out and spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on a guitar and then play through a $400 guitar amp? It makes no sense. You must have good tone in order to achieve greatness. Now, the tone I have right now is actually pretty damn fat. And I've had good tone through many stages of my life. When I first started playing, I was just after that big, heavy, fat, nasty tone. And I played through a PV Triple X, full stack. And it was nasty. But now the nastiness is as good as the amp was, the nastiness came from my rack. Because I had a really good signal chain and I had quite a few effects. A lot of processing going on. Then it started to progress a little bit, and I didn't want to be that heavy anymore. I wanted a good rock sound, good 80s metal sound, but without all that the PV Triple X put out. So it progressed over the years and it ended up being a Marshall JVM, and I really kind of started getting into that 80s British rock sound, which I still favored till this day. Even though I no longer own a Marshall, that's still the sound that I kind of favor to this day. You know, a Saldano Hot Rod 100, the Marshalls, stuff like that, the JVMs, the super high gain stuff. And in today's world, achieving great tones actually a hell of a lot simpler, because no longer do you have to have full stacks with racks and racks and racks of gear and 19 million pedals. Because as I got older, I kept paring things down. And I got to the point where I was starting to run combos, but I could never get my sound exactly like I liked it out of a combo. So that led me into the modeling area. And then I've had everything. I've had pods, pod pros, helixes, you name it, I had it. And I finally got down to the point where I was playing the fractal. No, I'm sorry, the Kemper. Now, my Kemper was a beast. And if you go back and you listen to my review of the 5320 Ibanez, you can hear my main gigging tone, and it was nasty. Absolutely freaking nasty. It was smooth, very heavy gain, and it was just a brilliant, brilliant tone. And actually, if it wasn't for the fact that it was missing a couple of effects that I wanted, I would still be playing the Kemper today. But it just so happened that Fractal has those effects that I was looking for on the unit. And I was standing down the road here, a piece of ways down yonder, and I ran into Andy Wood, and he and I were chit-chatting, and we were talking about tone and everything, and he started talking about the Fractal, and I said, well, I got the Kemper, dude. I think the amps are just a little better on the Kemper, and at this point, I hadn't played the Fractal. And he said, they probably are. He said, but I'm going to tell you, the effects on the Fractal, well, I said the amps are better on the Kemper, just in case I got that screwed up. He said, the effects on the Fractal are studio quality. And I was like, bullshit. They can't be that much better than the Kemper. So I bought a Fractal. And I had my Kemper for a long time after that. And I got to admit, the effects were not only studio quality, but the effects that I needed in it to tweak that final little bit of my tone was in the Fractal. And that's the sound you hear when I run direct. But that's not the sound you hear when I play live. Because that sound, even though I use it for direct, just because that's just where I'm always at, is on that tone. That is actually EQ'd and tweaked. Because I set the amp up, then after I get everything I want, then I go into the global EQ and I tweak it some more. It is set up for our live show. So it doesn't sound that great direct, but coming through our PA system, it is freaking huge. It is massive, to the point that every show I play, at least 1, 2, or 3 people come up and say, dude, what are you playing through? Your sound is just freaking huge. I spend a lot of time tweaking to get that sound out of that Fractal. And that's what it takes. Which brings us to our topic of the evening. The 5 definitive best tones in music on a guitar, period. The best. And the reason I went through this big dissertation to get up to this point is because tone is not something you just jump down, grab it, plug it into an amp, crank it up, and strike it. Because if you do, then your tone is shit at that point. And you got to have great tone. And you don't get great tone by plugging guitar directly into an amp. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of pre-things happening, a lot of post things happening, and I guarantee you, half the guitar players out there don't know which effects you run pre and which effects you run post. I guarantee you, half the guitar players out there do not know that. Because just because you have an effect, that doesn't mean you put it in front of the amp, but nor does it mean that you put it behind the amp. Certain effects go in a chain in certain places, and that's half the key to getting great tone. So the 5 guys I'm getting ready to mention, these guys figured that shit out. They understand signal chain. They understand speakers and woods and cabinets and, everything. Guitars, pickups. Do I use a cable? Do I use a wireless? These guys understand it. And kicking this list off, we're going to start with my number 5 tone of the greatest tones of all time. And the reason I'm doing this video is because I've been reading a bunch of stuff on tones. And every list I saw was completely different from the previous list that I just read. And I saw some of the stupidest shit on there. Slash, I'm sorry. He does not have one of the greatest tones at all, especially a top 5 tone. Give me a freaking break. Billy Corgan, are you shitting me? My shoes squeaking when I walk have better tone than his guitar. I'm sorry, it's not that damn great. And that's what spurred this on. Then a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of listening, so on, so on, so on. Because when I do these videos, they're never, oh shit, I'm going to do a video about that. This video started probably 8 months ago to get to this point right here. Hence, the definitive list. So coming in at number 5, Mr. Stevie Ray Vaughan. Love him or hate him, doesn't matter. Love blues or hate blues, does not matter. His blues tone, nobody was better. Nobody was better. It is so fat and so round and so big. It is stunning. And he plays through a myriad of stuff. For his distortion, of course, he uses the good old Tube Screamer, which is, I don't know if it's a vintage Tube Screamer or one of the reissues, but that's what he has for his distortion stuff, because that is like the heralded distortion pedal. But he plays through a myriad of amps. He has Marshalls pushing cabs. He has Fenders pushing cabs. He's got two Fenders. He's got two 410s, and he's got one Fender with a 15-inch in it. And all this shit is running together to give him a fat monster tone. And of course, it starts with his Fender guitars. Now, he's played several guitars over the time, but Fenders is what he plays. That's what he's known for, is his Fenders. And I think he plays with 11 gauge strings down a half step. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to bend an 11 gauge string down a half step. It's not an easy task. But that string helps add to his actual tone and the fatness of his tone. Because for the clean tone that he uses, or the slightly breaking up tone, it is absolutely monster fat. So, in my number 5 spot, I got to go with Stevie Ray Vaughan, because as far as blues goes, I can't think of one person that has a better tone than Stevie Ray Vaughan. Period. Coming in at number 4, guitar player everybody knows, everybody loves Queen. We are coming in with Mr. Brian May. That's my Great Dane, if you can hear that. So you're thinking, Brian May, dude, Brian May's tone, it's such a signature tone. How can he be number 4? Well, because there's 3 people in front of him that are better. That's how. But Brian May's tone, without a doubt, is a fantastic rock and roll tone. It is his signature tone that he spent a lot of time crafting. And there again, he didn't grab any old guitar, plug it into an amp, and go, oh shit, I'm Brian May. It didn't work that way. He has a very specific signal chain set up in order for his sound to sound like that. And of course, we've all heard 1,000 times that tone starts here. And I will give you, to a certain degree, I will say that is true. But there's a lot more to it than that for most guitar players, not all guitar players. Brian May, I'd say his tone is not so much here as it is in his technical proficiency and his signal chain. Because in order to get to sound like Brian May, you got to have a Burns guitar. That is the key ingredient to his tone. And I think the one he plays is a 1972 maybe, is the one he plays, I think, mostly. But there's other things too. Because you remember earlier when I said that your pick makes a big difference in your tone? Well, he plays with a 6-pence coin. Now, how or why anybody would want to do that? He says because it gives him a better feel, a better touch. I do not understand that, because you're running metal on metal. So I have no idea how you get any type of feel out of that whatsoever. But he's Brian May. I am not. But that is also part of his tone, using that 6-pence coin that he picks with. And then he runs into a myriad, a bevy, a plethora of top boost Vox amplifiers. And he has an external effect, which is a top boost, a treble boost that sits outside of that. And when you put all that together with Brian May playing, you end up with that tone. Now, if you had the money to do it, I'm sure you could copy that tone relatively easily, but you would have to have those specific parts to do it. But regardless of that, Brian May has a monstrous tone. You can put his tone in any band in the world, and you will instantly know that is Brian May. So for that reason, I'm giving Brian May the number 4 spot on the definitive top 5 tones ever. Moving on, We're going to jump into number 3, and this guy's one of my favorite guitar players. I love listening to this band. I love listening to them in a house. I love it with a mouse. I will listen to them in a car. I will listen to them in a bar. And I will listen to them with Sam I Am. Because this guy is a musical genius. And not only is he a musical genius, he's a freaking genius. He's pretty much just a genius. He graduated from MIT with an engineering degree, worked at Eastman Kodak. He recorded their first album before a single vocal track was laid. The entire album was done. And he played the guitars and all the keyboards on that album and ended up inventing or making all of his own effects. That is correct. That is Mr. Tom Scholz. The guy is an absolute musical genius. This guy, what he did is he would play his Les Paul. That's my guitar sound because my allergies are all dicked up. It's supposed to sound, hang on. That's what it's supposed to sound like. But the first one was a dud. It was, see, that's a guitar player with shitty tone right there. That is a prime example of shitty tone. But what he did is he had his Les Paul, and he had a double coil in the back, and he had a P90 in the front. And he went through to a Marshall amp, and he recorded all the tracks for it. Well, after he recorded all the tracks, to get the tone that he wanted, he reprocessed it and resignal and reprocess and resignal and process, signal, process, signal, process, signal, EQ, 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 to get the sound he wanted. He created all that shit in post, and it sounded amazing. You've heard the albums. They're stunningly good. And one thing I love about Tom Scholz in Boston, you listen to a band and you have your band, right? Your band. You have your singer sits right here on top. Then you have your rhythm, your guitar player. And then when it would be, lead time, he'd go up to the lead channel and it'd sit right about where the singer is. Until you get to Boston. Because when Tom Scholz would play a lead, yeah, it's up here. And I absolutely love that. And nobody else in the world could pull it off. Nobody could pull that off but Boston. But his leads are so musical and they sound so good. And I don't mean sound as in the musicality of it, the tone. It absolutely freaking works. So what he did, cut the tracks, processed the hell out of it, got the actual sound he needed. Then it was time to play shows. Guess what? Could not replicate the sound. Couldn't even get close. So what does he do? He gets out the old pencil, the slider rule, and the screwdriver, and he starts making shit. He starts making his own effects, which brought up the Scholz engineering, the Scholz R&D, which gave us not only an easy way to buy his amazing tone, but it also gave us the Rockman, which in itself, till this day, it is still a masterpiece of an amp. And I can't remember if it was Steve Vai or not, but I was reading this article and they were showing a picture of his pedal board, and guess what was on the pedal board? A freaking Rockman, an original Rockman sitting on it. And they asked him about it, if it was Vai, I can't remember. And they said, yeah, it's just, I use it. It's got great tone, that little bitty box. And it's just a little bitty box. Monster tone. And the tone was so monstrous that he created the groundbreaking, phenomenal selling album Hysteria from Def Leppard. All the guitar tracks were recorded in a studio on a Rockman. That's how good it was. That's how good he understood tone. That he could get all that tone and compress it down into a little bitty box. And it was so damn good, one of the best-selling albums ever, all the guitar tracks, that's what they used for the clean and the distorted channels. That, my friends, is understanding tone. So Tom Scholz not only understands the guitar and how to play the hell out of it, his understanding of signal chain and everything it takes to make an amazing tone is phenomenal. It's beyond phenomenal. I wouldn't know where to begin. You know what? I need a chorus that sounds exactly like this. Try this one. That sucks. Sucks. Piss on it. I'll just go make one. That's what the guy did. He just went out and made the damn thing. And to me, that is absolutely amazing that he understands tones so well. He could sit there and wire together the gear he needed to give him the exact sound he was hearing here. To me, that is amazing. And the guy's a damn good guitar player. Let's be honest, man. His tone and his playing is the epitome of arena rock. They set that sound. Tom Schultz did. And back when they did the original Boston album, I don't give a shit what you were listening to. There was not a single guitar out there, except maybe Queen, that sounded that good. Nothing else was kicking ass like that. And it was phenomenal, and it's still phenomenal today. So Tom Schultz takes my number 3 spot. Before I go on, I got to say, please subscribe to the channel. If you want to help support the page, you can go over to my Patreon page. And I got, real quick, I got some swag I've been looking at from my Patreon page. And my wife had this cup. And I was thinking about getting it, but I thought, that might offend some people. And what it is, it's things that guitar players say, and it's actually crazy funny. But it drops the F-bomb in it a whole hell of a lot. Now, does that bother me? Absolutely not. But, I don't want to offend anybody. Well, not on this channel anyway. On my other channel, I don't give a shit. I offend everybody on my other one. But on this one, I don't want to offend anybody. So I was thinking about getting that, but it's got some really, really dirty words on it. So that one's kind of on standby, but I'm working on swag. It's just trying to find, you don't want to do the same shit everybody else does. You try to find something a little different. And I've made a few phone calls trying to work out some deals with a couple of things, and I've kind of struck out on it for right now. I've struck out on it. It doesn't mean we're done. It just means we got to go a different route. So working on some stuff. So if you want to support the page, you can go over to my Patreon page. And like I said, please subscribe to the channel. If you have any comments or questions, drop them down. Usually it takes me a day or two to get around to answering them, but I do answer all comments and all questions. I answer 99.9% of them. If if somebody just leaves a random comment, whatever it is, sometimes I'll just move on. But I mean, even things as little as, hey, dude, that's a really nice guitar. I even reply back to that. Thanks for the comment. Thanks, my friend. Thank you. God bless you. So on, so on, so on. Because if you're going to take the time to send me a message, I'm sure as hell going to take the time to answer it. So if you have any questions or comments, leave it down below. So moving on to my number 2 spot. Now, before I name this guy off, I'm just going to tell you, 1, 2, and 3 honestly could have gone in any order. These 3 guys that are my top 3, they understand tone and signal chain better than anybody else in the world. And it literally could have gone in any particular order. But since I had to put them in an order, I just dropped them in this order. But coming in at number 2, that is correct, Mr. Eddie Van Halen. Yeah, I thought you thought he was going to be my number 1, didn't you? Wrong. I got him at number 2. Eddie Van Halen, again, is a tone monster. Now, you remember I said earlier, everybody, the tone starts in your fingers. For the most part, I call bullshit on that, except for when it comes to Eddie Van Halen. I do believe that half of his tone comes through his fingers. I have watched old video of him playing these little practice amps, little shitty ass, whatever they are, and it sounds just like Eddie Van Halen. It's insane. This guy could come over and play through my rig, and it would still sound exactly like Eddie Van Halen playing through his rig. I don't know how he does it. I don't know what kind of voodoo that he puts on it, what kind of black magic he's got rolling with it. But it doesn't matter what Eddie Van Halen plays, it sounds exactly like Eddie Van Halen. Period. That amazes me how that happens. But he understands tone. He started his tone chasing years and years and years and years ago when he was just a little Edward. And then he grew up to be the Edward. And we all know how he got his tone. We know that he used, very low PAF output pickups. He'd run through a Marshall amp, pretty much everything cranked up, but then he'd run an attenuator on it and had a shit ton of sag in it. And that was a lot of it to his Brown sound, besides the usual suspects for the effects. He did have flange, he did have phase, he's got his wah pedal, the usual stuff. One of the big things he did was the 3000, the H3000, and he would run it up. He started running the wet, dry, wet, and one side would be like, down 7, 8, 9, 10, 11%. And then the other side, he would raise up 7, 8, 9, 10, 11%. And then he would run the dry channel, and that just gave him this huge, fat, massive sound that progressed. At first that's not what it was, but as it got going, that's what it progressed into. And it hit its most awesomeness right around the balance era, to me, is when he got it all figured out, because he was running, the pitch shift. And like I said, and that just really made everything very thick. knocking one side down a little bit, knocking one side up a little bit. Then you got that center channel that's right in pitch. And if you listen to his early stuff, if you listen to the isolated guitar tracks, I got to be honest, off the first couple albums, it was kind of shitty. It really wasn't that good. It was very fizzy. It was very bright, very buzzy. I wasn't a big fan of it. And you can hear it. And most people overlook it when he does like Eruption. Because what he was doing back in the day was so cutting edge and just so fan. And it's not cutting edge anymore, but it's still an amazing piece of guitar work. But if you listen to the sound, it's just, the tone of it is, it's good, but it's not great. I'm sorry. It's just not great. But being as Eddie Van Halen is one of those people who absolutely understands tone. He was constantly progressing, constantly changing, constantly moving forward. To the point where he started making his own guitars. The pickups were wound a certain way. He has a very specific pick that he uses. I'm telling you, pick makes a big difference in your tone. Then he started making his own amps with a specific speaker, with specific woods, specific tubes, so on and so on and so on. All that culminates in his tone. And like I said, it hit its peak right around Balance is where it hit its peak at. And that's actually when he left the Marshall and he went over to the Saldano. And that was pretty much where his tone really, to me, became solidified, was at Balance. And it's even though he's changed the amps up, all these amps are kind of based off of a Marshall type of thing, even though his new amps use a 6L6 instead of using the Marshall setup. He's using more of the American setup now. And but even though they're different, there's not a big difference in the sound between, running that Saldano to what he's running now. And he's still using a lot of the same effects through the path, still using, the H3000s and all that stuff. But his tone just got heavier and fatter and fatter and fatter as time went on. And like I said, it really Balance is where it kind of all culminated into an amazing tone. And then by the time, we get down to Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do, that's just a nasty, brutal tone. I love that tone. And it's not shockingly high gain, and it sounds absolutely great. But Eddie Van Halen, he understands tone. But most people understand it from the guitar down to the amp, so on. Eddie Van Halen understands it from here. Because nobody has his swing. Nobody has his swagger. And this culminates in his tone. And, and everybody says that, well, tone starts in your fingers. I think that's only true for Eddie Van Halen. I don't think that to be true to anybody else. I think that is only an Eddie Van Halen thing. So moving on from Eddie Van Halen, now we're getting down to my number one. And I'm sorry. The reason I chose this guy, and like I said, any of these guys could have gone 1, 2, and 3. The reason I chose this guy as number one, because, you take Brian May. He has a great tone. Tom Schatz, he has a great tone. Eddie Van Halen has a great tone. This guy has great tones. Tones. And of course, that is the man, the magical, the one and only David Gilmour. That is correct, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Gilmour. I don't think anybody in this world, besides maybe Tom Schatz, understands signal chain as well as David Gilmour. I was looking at a picture of his racks. It is insane the amount of crap they have crammed into these racks. I bet there's 5,769 damn effects sitting in the racks, and that doesn't count the damn pedal board. That's just shit stuck in the racks. It is insane looking at this thing. I bet the back of it, the wiring, looks like somebody took a bowl of spaghetti, threw it back there, and there's just shit laying everywhere. Spaghetti wires all over the damn place. He understands signal chains so well. I guarantee you, when he writes a solo, he already knows what he's going to do to get the sound he wants before he even freaking does it. I guarantee it. And like I said, he has great tones, not a great tone. Now, he has a base of everything that he does. Granted, he's played with, his Strats, Telecasters, he's played Les Pauls, plethora of acoustics, got his steel guitars, but he's famous for his Stratocasters. And he's had several variations of the pickups in there. And believe it or not, my favorite setup on the pickups is when he ran the EMGs. I just thought that tone was really smooth. I just thought that was great. And even though I'm not a Strat guy, they do sound damn good with those David Gilmour EMGs in it. They sound pretty damn tight. But he has the Strats, a plethora of effects. And then it all comes out in his Hiwatt 100s. But he understands every aspect of the effects. He understands everything a phaser does, everything a flanger does, everything a distortion pedal does, everything a fuzz pedal does, everything an EQ does, everything a pitch shifter does. His knowledge of signal chain is just, it's got to be insane, because this started back in the day. I mean, if you listen to all the early, well, not the early stuff, not the Sid Barrett stuff, but when you get in the Dark Side of the Moon, it's so ethereal sounding. And his knowledge of effects absolutely stuns me, and what it takes to get the sound. Because one thing, David Gilmour's not the fastest guitar player in the world. You don't have to be the fastest guitar player in the world. At the end of the day, it's cool, but it doesn't really mean shit. But what he is the guitar player that always plays the exact right note at the exact right time with the exact right effects. I mean, if you listen to stuff like Run Like Hell, you got delays just bouncing all over the damn place, all over the place. Then you jump into Comfortably Numb, where you got the really low gain first solo, but then you got the very oversaturated second solo that just freaking wells. This guy completely understands, okay, this is a tone, but the composition of the song is this. So the sound I want to give it that ethereal sound to go with it is this. And he just understands. And therefore, I had to give David Gilmour my number one spot, dude, because, I mean, like I said, Brian May has a great tone. Eddie Van Halen has a great tone. Stevie Ray Vaughan has a great tone. Tom Schatz has a great tone. David Gilmour has great tones. He has multiples of them. And granted, none of these guitar players are replaceable. Eddie Van Halen dies. I'm sorry, that's the end of Van Halen. I mean, it's truly the end of Van Halen. It's just like, Neil Peart dies. That's the end of Rush. They're integral parts of what they do. And they have a great tone. Gilmour's got great tones. He's got a lot of great tones. So, that is the definitive. That is, you cannot argue about it. Son of a bitch, you can't say anything about it. That is the list, the top 5 greatest tones in the world coming from a guitar player. No, I understand guitar. I am a gearhead myself. I understand tone. I understand how this shit works. And they're the best. Those 5 I gave you are simply the best tones in guitar world. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of great tones. And if I could actually break this down by different types of guitar players, and I could pick out a great tone for each thing. I could pick one out for country, one for metal, one for speed metal, yada, yada. Zakk Wylde, love him or hate him. I love Zakk. Zakk's tone is brutal. Man, if you listen to No More Tears, dude, it is fat and freaking heavy. I love that tone. Of course, the guys using guitar strings are about as big as round as my damn thumb. They're huge. And that helps to give you a very fat, low bottom end. And there's a lot of tricks to getting tone. And, if you're running this, and you may or may not know this, but I'm going to say it anyways. It's not my secret. Well, it's not a secret, but shocking how many people don't know it. If you're running, I don't give a shit how high a distortion channel you're running. The best thing you can do to your amp is put a distortion pedal in front of it. Turn the gain all the way down, crank the boost all the way up. If yours has an EQ it however you see fit. That will do more for your damn sound than anything else in this world you can buy. Even on my Fractal, when I program in a sound, I don't care if it's light distortion heavy. The first thing I do is I put a distortion pedal, because that tightens that sound up substantially. Gives it a lot more attack. Gives it a lot more chuggability. Keeps it from sounding floppy and loose and crappy. And it's, there's a lot of aspects to it. But just a quick tip. If you didn't know, throw a distortion pedal in front of your damn amp. Use the gain from your amp, throw a distortion pedal in front of it, and see what it does for your sound. It'll wake you up. Getting ready to buy another camera. Not that I do not like my Blackmagics. These are my babies. I love my Blackmagic cameras. But I need something that has an autofocus on it because these Blackmagic cameras are more cinema style cameras. Because actually, you know what? We're going to take a second. We're going to talk about me, my favorite thing. I'm kidding. We're getting ready to start shooting a movie for the Knoxville Horror Film Fest, and I'm going to be using my Blackmagic cinema cameras for that. My daughter is writing the script, man. She's just got a knack for doing shit like that. Very good writer. And we're going to try to shoot 2 if we can. Been trying to get another camera because I need something with a very fast autofocus because we're actually starting another channel. Yeah, believe it or not. Angry Flip Flops. And there's a story behind the name of Angry Flip Flops. Something my wife penned. And my wife and I are going to be doing this together. And it's not going to be like day in the life shit. It's just going to be just a whole bunch of myriad. It's going to be a myriad of stuff, a plethora of things. You know, like one day she'll make her ghetto guacamole, stuff like that. You know, next day it'll be something completely stupid. But this is something I've been wanting to do with my wife for a while. And, you know, and I enjoy doing these things with her because even though she doesn't really show it on camera the few times she's been on, because I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when you put somebody on camera that's never been on it, as soon as that red light turns on, they turn into a complete idiot, complete moron. As soon as that red light turns on, they have no idea what to do. So I'm trying to get my wife over the camera shyness right now, little by little, but she's actually funnier than shit. She's actually funny as hell. And that's where the Angry Flip Flops thing came in because I wear flip flops a lot around the house and it's a whole other story. So that channel is going to be coming up amongst the other 9 billion other things I got going on in this world. That will be coming up, and when that gets started, I will let you know. And as I start shooting, when we start shooting this thing, I do have a film channel that a lot of you probably are not aware of. It's TC Taylor, that I don't do anything on because I just simply don't have the time because this channel is my main focus. But as I'm shooting the film, I will be putting a lot of stuff up on that channel. So when that gets started, I will be posting links on how we do things, certain things that we do. You know, if we do any effects, we're going to try to do as many practical effects on this as we possibly can. My daughter and I are huge into freaking horror movies. I mean, huge into horror movies. And we're both cinema buffs. Honestly, in another life, I probably would have been a director because I love film and I love doing stuff like that. And because that's what I do for a living is I do video and photography and unfortunately graphic design, which sucks. But I do it anyway. I hate doing graphic design. And but that's what I do for a living. So that's going to be coming up. And like I said, just all kinds of things are going to be happening. So I'll keep you all posted on the film when I get Angry Flip Flops up. I got to get back onto my other channel, Closed Minded. 4 channels. That's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm spending all my money on gear, so I'm going to be broke. On that note, I just had to throw that out there. A little bit of, I love throwing out the what's coming up stuff. I got to do that. On that note, we're going to wrap it up right there. Like I said, that is the definitive 5 best tones in guitar and music, period, ever. Today, tomorrow, doesn't matter the genre. Those are the 5. If you disagree, let me know. Leave me a comment. Because I'm sure there's somebody that I may not have ever heard of that I just forgot about. Because I can sit here right now and name 1,000 great guitar players. And 995 are going to have shitty tone. I could do that all day long. All day long. So if I've missed something, let me know. If you have a comment, drop it down in the comment section. If you have a question, drop it in the comment section. I will get back to you. Please subscribe to the channel. Check out my Patreon page. I'm slowly getting stuff up on my Instagram, blah, 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 blah. And on that note, like the great Sammy Hagar says, if you miss the beat, you lose the rhythm and nothing falls into place, including your tone. Because if you have shitty tone, your wife or your girlfriend will leave you. Your dog will probably get hit by a car and you'll probably lose your job. Work on your tone, make your life better for everybody. And until the next video, rock on.